Welcome to the Pharmacist Voice Podcast, episode 274. I'm your host, Kim Newlove. This is the 30th episode in my drug name pronunciation series. We don't cover pharmacology here, we just talk about pronunciations. And today we are talking about two SSRI antidepressants. They are citalopram and escitalopram. Citalopram is generic for Celexa, and escitalopram is generic for Lexapro. If you are new to my drug name pronunciation series, welcome. In this episode, I will divide all 4 drug names into syllables. I will tell you which syllables to emphasize, and then I will share my sources. The written pronunciations can be helpful, so you can find those in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. Let's get started with citalopram. Citalopram has 4 syllables. Citalopram. Si like sit, tal like talent, which is a short O sound or a schwa O sound, like the O in gonna, as in I'm gonna say instead of O, and pram, which is the British word for a baby carriage, pram. Put that all together and you get citalopram. Emphasize the second syllable, tal. See if you can hear that emphasis when I say it slowly. Citalopram. Citalopram. My source for this pronunciation is not the USP Dictionary online for a change. Usually that is my go-to reference for generic drug name pronunciations. Not today. My source is my years of clinical experience and popular opinion. I don't do this much. Pretty much everyone says citalopram in the United States. So what's wrong with the pronunciation in the dictionary, you're probably wondering. The USP Dictionary says that citalopram is actually pronounced citalopram. Citalopram. Even though the USP Dictionary online is my favorite generic drug name reference, every once in a while, I will find a drug name that I disagree with. Rather than skipping drug names that I disagree with, I choose to face them head on and I talk about them and I give you my rationale. If you choose to say citalopram, other medical professionals will likely understand your meaning. However, you have just essentially marked yourself as different. When you don't say drug names the way that everyone else does, some people may question whether they can trust what you're talking about. If you have ever been in a CE session and the speaker mispronounces drug names, you know what I'm talking about. Earn trust from your audience, say citalopram. Next up is the brand name Celexa. Celexa has 3 syllables. Celexa. About 10 years ago, you probably remember this, Amazon invented a product called Alexa. I am sorry if you are listening to this in your home and I am triggering your Alexa, but anyways, Alexa comes to mind. Now, Alexa, the Amazon product, is in no way connected to the drug name Celexa. I bring up Alexa because the drug name Celexa sounds similar to Alexa. What a fun conversation, right? Just add an S to the beginning of the name Alexa and you have Celexa. Celexa. The written pronunciation that I found does not indicate which syllable to emphasize. So that means that I get to tell you what I emphasize. I emphasize lex. See if you can hear that emphasis when I say it slowly. Celexa. Celexa. That one is pretty easy. I found the written pronunciation for Celexa in the medication guide for Celexa on the FDA's website. Pretty easy to find. I'll put a link to that in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. That does it for Celexa. Now let's talk about escitalopram. Escitalopram is generic for Lexapro. Escitalopram has 5 syllables. ES-si-TAL-uh-pram. Now, if you know how to say citalopram, all you need to do is put the letter S in front of citalopram and you have escitalopram. It's just that easy. S like the letter in the alphabet, si like sit, tal like talent, which is a short O sound or a schwa O sound, like the O in gonna. I'm gonna say instead of O, and pram, like the British word for a baby carriage. exactly the same as citalopram, again with just the letter S in front of it. Put all 5 syllables together and you get Escitalopram. Emphasize S and TAL. TAL gets the most emphasis. See if you can hear the emphasis on S and TAL when I say the drug name slowly. Escitalopram. Escitalopram. My source for this pronunciation, the pronunciation for escitalopram, is the same as it was for citalopram: clinical experience and popular opinion. The USP Dictionary Online published the pronunciation for escitalopram as ES-si-TAL-u-pram. As with citalopram, I politely disagree. Generic Lexapro is escitalopram to me. However, if you choose to say escitalopram, there's a good chance that people will know what you're talking about. That ends escitalopram. Let's move on to our last drug name of the day, which is Lexapro. Lexapro has 3 syllables. Leks-a-pro. Lex like Lexus the car brand, like a short A sound or a schwa A sound, and pro, which is short for professional, like professional soccer, professional football, professional basketball. Pro. Put all 3 syllables together and you get Lexapro. As with Celexa, the written pronunciation does not indicate which syllable to emphasize, but I tend to emphasize lex. See if you can hear that emphasis when I say it slowly. Lexapro. How did I find the pronunciation for Lexapro? I found the written pronunciation for Lexapro in the medication guide for Lexapro on the FDA's website. Pretty easy to find. There is a link to that in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. That does it for Lexapro. Now let's review. I divided citalopram, Celexa, escitalopram, and Lexapro into syllables. I talked about which syllables to emphasize, and then I shared my sources. The written pronunciations for all 4 drug names are in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. And that's it. That does it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me to learn how to say citalopram, Celexa, escitalopram, and Lexapro. To find the show notes for this episode, go to thepharmacistvoice.com, click on the podcast tab, and then search for episode 274. In the show notes, you'll find the written pronunciations for all 4 drug names, links to the other 29 episodes in my drug name pronunciation series, my social media links, and more. Now, when you go check out those links, feel free to connect with me on social media. LinkedIn's my favorite, but I also have Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you know someone who needs to learn how to say citalopram, Celexa, escitalopram, and Lexapro, please share this episode with them. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thanks for listening today. I'll talk to you next Friday.